with my finger here, with my nail. I want to hurt myself. Yeah.
The first I'm looking at is myself. I haven't been doing things good enough. I haven't been scoring my chances and everything. So.
Manchester City's downfall has reached unprecedented lows. The reigning Premier League champions have now lost 9 of their last 12 matches across all competitions. 9 defeats. Let that sink in. This is a team that, not so long ago, was hailed as the epitome of modern football, tactically brilliant, physically dominant, and seemingly invincible. Now, they look like a shadow of their former selves, stumbling from one defeat to the next in what feels like a slow-motion implosion. The stats are staggering. In the span of just 7 weeks, City have gone from title contenders to a team in crisis. Their defensive frailties, lack of composure, and inability to adapt have been ruthlessly exposed. Let's break it down. Against Tottenham in the EFL Cup, they suffered a narrow 1-0 loss, failing to create meaningful chances in a game they once would have dominated. Then came the 4-1 humiliation at the hands of Sporting Lisbon in the Champions League, a result that shook even the most optimistic fans. It didn't end there. Bournemouth, a team fighting for survival, managed a shock 2-1 victory, followed by Brighton, who scored twice in 5 minutes to edge City 3-2. And the Manchester derby, a disaster. United scored 2 goals in 3 minutes, leaving City stunned and broken. Add to that a 4-0 thrashing by Tottenham, and let's not forget their last 2-1 defeat by Aston Villa, again. And it's clear this is not just a blip, this is a full-blown crisis. But perhaps the most telling statistic of all is how quickly City concede goals once their opponents find a breakthrough. In these 9 defeats, quick-fire goals have been their undoing time and again. 2 goals in 5 minutes against Brighton, 3 goals in 15 minutes against Liverpool, 2 goals in 3 minutes against United. It's as if the team loses all sense of organisation and belief the moment the first goal goes in. The psychological toll on the players is evident. They look defeated before the final whistle even blows. And then there's Pep Guardiola, the man many consider the greatest football manager of all time. For the first time in his illustrious 16-year career, Pep looks lost, like he's hit a wall he can't climb. The man who revolutionized football tactics is now scratching his head in bewilderment, openly admitting that he's not sleeping or eating well. The pressure is getting to him, and it shows. So what's the problem? Is it the absence of key players like Rodri, whose influence in midfield cannot be overstated? Or is it something deeper? Could it be that Guardiola's tactics, once revolutionary, are now predictable, easily countered by teams who have studied him for years? Perhaps it's a combination of both. And this raises an even bigger question. How can a team with such a talented squad and a world-class manager unravel so spectacularly? How can a man hailed as the greatest coach the world has ever seen appear so utterly devoid of solutions? Is this just a rough patch, or are we witnessing the limits of Pep's genius? Maybe it's time to consider that Guardiola's success has always depended on having the best players and the biggest budgets. From Barcelona to Bayern Munich to City, his teams have always been stacked with world-class talent. But now, with injuries piling up and confidence at an all-time low, Pep has been forced to operate outside his comfort zone, and the results speak for themselves. So, what's the actual problem with Manchester City? The first and most obvious problem is one even Pep himself has admitted to: Rodri's absence. This might be the first time we've seen claims that Rodri didn't deserve the Ballon d'Or completely shut down. Without him, Manchester City looks like a shadow of the team that dominated world football. Rodri isn't just your average holding midfielder. He's the engine of this City team, doing far more than just breaking up attacks. He's the first player to receive the ball from the back, dictating the tempo and starting moves that often end in goals. Under Pep, he's evolved from being a pure number 6 into a hybrid of a 6 and an 8, capable of dominating defensively while also contributing massively in attack. Just look at last season: 12 goals, 14 assists, and 11 big chances created. 8 of those goals and 9 assists came in the Premier League, but it wasn't just about numbers, it was when he delivered. A late winner against Sheffield, a crucial equaliser against Chelsea, and that rocket against West Ham on the final day helped City secure yet another league title. But this season, his absence has been glaring. In the 3 Premier League matches Rodri missed, City lost all 3, a shocking stat for a team that rarely drops points. City doesn't just miss his quality, they miss his presence. When Rodri isn't on the pitch, the midfield collapses. The players Pep has tried, like Kovacic, Muniz, and Bernardo Silva, aren't natural defensive midfielders. they don't have the same athleticism or defensive awareness to anchor the midfield. Even in a double pivot, there's no one to fill that gap. Rodri's importance is undeniable, and without him, City has struggled to control games. This leads us to problem number 2, Pep Guardiola himself. For years, Pep has been hailed as a tactical genius, the man who rewrote football with his intricate systems and relentless pressing. But now, that image is beginning to crumble. Many are questioning if Pep can truly adapt when things go wrong, or if his success has always relied on having the best players rather than his ability to build a team from scratch. Let's face it, Pep has always had the luxury of managing elite squads at clubs like Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and now Manchester City. With unlimited resources and world-class players at his disposal, it's easy to look like a genius. But when the pieces aren't perfectly in place, like now with Rodri missing or Kevin De Bruyne injured, he seems to have no plan B. His reliance on stars to execute his complex tactics is being exposed. This season, Pep has looked lost. His body language says it all. Gone is the confident figure who barked orders on the touchline. Instead, we see a man scratching his head, pacing nervously, and visibly defeated. For the first time in his 16-year managerial career, Pep appears out of ideas. His substitutions feel desperate, his starting lineups lack balance, and his once unpredictable tactics are being easily read by opponents. And that's another issue, his tactics. The high press and the possession-based football that once stunned the world have been figured out by other managers. Teams now know how to exploit the spaces City leave behind when pressing or to neutralize their build-up play. Guardiola hasn't evolved to counter these strategies, and as a result, his tactics are starting to look outdated. Pep's mental state is also under scrutiny. Reports of him admitting he isn't sleeping or eating properly have raised concerns about whether he's mentally equipped to turn things around. When a manager starts doubting himself, it trickles down to the players, and that's exactly what seems to be happening at City. Pep is too stubborn to adapt, sticking rigidly to his philosophy even when it's failing. He's burnt out, having spent too long at City without a fresh challenge. He's becoming just another average coach, brilliant when things are going well, but unable to handle adversity. The cracks in Pep's image are undeniable, and his inability to steer the ship during this crisis is putting his legacy at risk. Which brings us to the next problem, Erling Haaland. Last season, he was a goal machine, breaking records left and right and looking unstoppable. But this season, it's like the magic has faded. Haaland isn't scoring as freely, and the question is, why? The first and most obvious issue is the lack of service. Haaland thrives on being fed chances. He's not the type of player to drop deep, create his own opportunities, or orchestrate play. He's a pure finisher, and without someone like Kevin De Bruyne pulling the strings, he's been left isolated up front. Games are ending with Haaland barely touching the ball, sometimes having fewer touches than the goalkeeper. That's shocking for a striker who is supposed to be the focal point of this team. Rodri's absence hasn't just affected the midfield defensively, it's also disrupted the entire attacking flow. City used to dominate possession and create endless chances, with De Bruyne and Rodri linking up to feed Haaland. Now, without that rhythm, Haaland is left waiting for service that never comes. He's making runs, but no one is picking him out. It's a waste of his biggest strengths. Another problem is Haaland's one-dimensional style. As good as he is at finishing, he doesn't offer much else. Unlike strikers who can drop into midfield, link up play, or create chances for themselves, Haaland is all about being in the right place at the right time to score. When the team around him isn't functioning properly, he doesn't adapt. Instead, he disappears from games, making him a passenger rather than a solution. This season has exposed a harsh truth. Haaland can't carry a team on his own. He needs the system to work perfectly around him to be effective. Without that, he looks ordinary, a striker who can't influence the game unless the ball is delivered to him on a plate. Is Haaland just a flat-track bully? Someone who racks up goals when the team is cruising but vanishes when things get tough? Or does City's style of play not suit him anymore as they're no longer creating the same volume of chances? Whatever the case, Haaland's struggles are a huge part of City's problems. The team is built to maximize his strengths, but right now it's failing to do that. And this failure isn't just on Haaland, it's on the entire system, which brings us to the next problem. City's squad management, specifically with the decision to let go of young talents like Cole Palmer. Last season, Palmer showed glimpses of brilliance, contributing in crucial moments like the UEFA Super Cup and even proving he could handle high-pressure situations. Yet, instead of integrating him into the squad as a potential solution for creative midfield issues, City sold him. With Kevin De Bruyne sidelined for an extended period due to injury, Pep's midfield options have been stretched thin. Why didn't Pep experiment with Palmer as one of the 8 or even as a backup for De Bruyne in the number putt to Punga? His skill set, which includes creativity, composure on the ball, and an eye for goal, could have been invaluable this season, especially with the team's current struggles to create chances. Palmer's departure feels like a missed opportunity. In a system where City lacks midfield dynamism, having a young, hungry, and talented player like him could have provided a spark. Instead, City now finds themselves relying on midfielders who either lack Rodri's defensive stability or De Bruyne's creativity. This raises questions about Pep's squad-building strategy. While City has incredible depth in some areas, the midfield looks worryingly thin without Rodri and De Bruyne. And as the team struggles to maintain its usual fluidity, decisions like letting Palmer go look increasingly questionable. Could retaining Palmer have prevented some of City's current issues? Perhaps. But now, we'll never know, and City is left scrambling for solutions that don't seem to be working. Manchester City's downfall has been nothing short of shocking. Once the team that could break down any opponent, they now look vulnerable. Every team that faces them feels they have a chance. Pep Guardiola, once hailed as the greatest, now seems lost. His usual tactical brilliance is nowhere to be found, and for the first time, his decisions are being questioned. With key players like Rodri missing, City have struggled to find a solution, and even their star man, Erling Haaland, seems isolated up front. The team's confidence is shattered. In previous seasons, if City went 1-0 up, it felt like the game was over. Now, teams fight back. The fear factor is gone. Even players like Kevin De Bruyne, who once defined the team's success, are struggling to maintain their form. Despite Pep's contract extension, the challenge remains. Can he turn this around, or has the inevitable decline already begun? Only time will tell.